girl seems to be struggling just to stay conscious. High above the city, a colossal figure looms over her. With what little strength she has left, she manages to choke out a single word: Dad. Giant eyes hovering in the sky herald the end of times. Let's rewind to the past. There's a mysterious object out in space, right near the Hydra constellation. Meanwhile, in a building in Tokyo, Professor Oguro is being awarded a Nobel Prize. He accepts it with obvious excitement, recognized for his groundbreaking astronomical discoveries. Specifically, he discovered an unknown planet that emerged from a wormhole found 30 years prior. This wormhole is essentially a tunnel connecting our universe to somewhere else, a mysterious realm on the other side dubbed Universe X. By its very nature, the wormhole is invisible, but thanks to an incredibly powerful telescope, they were able to spot the emergence of this unknown planet, providing the ultimate proof that the wormhole actually exists. Professor Oguro explains that this new celestial body follows a very bizarre orbit, something completely outside the norm. Regardless, the appearance of this planet marks one of the most monumental events in the history of astrophysics. A reporter asks what he plans to name it, since discovering it gives him the naming rights. A bit sheepishly, Oguro announces that the planet will be called Remina in honor of his only daughter, who's right there in the audience. He actually discovered the planet on Remina's 16th birthday, and eerily enough, it's located exactly 16 light years away from Earth. Some people even whisper that the planet might have been born on the exact same day she was. The crowd murmurs about how beautiful Remina is, and someone asks her how she feels about her father's decision. She admits that it's actually really embarrassing for her, and she had even tried to talk him out of it. Her father chimes in, explaining that ever since her mother passed away, Remina had become quite withdrawn. The journalists immediately start buzzing about the incredible story they have on their hands. A planet from another dimension, a Nobel-winning scientist, and the beloved daughter who inspired its name. Later, at the observatory, researchers chat with Professor Oguro about how astonishing planet Remina is, especially when it comes to the way it moves. They note that it travels incredibly fast, approaching and sometimes even exceeding the speed of light. Oguro confirms this, though he points out that moving like that completely defies the laws of physics. But the weirdest part of all is that other celestial bodies seem to simply vanish whenever planet Remina gets near them. With all these bizarre characteristics, the discovery easily stands as the greatest event in the history of modern science. The discovery explodes across magazines and newspapers. Headlines pop up like Remina, the galaxy's most mysterious star named after a beautiful girl, or the two Reminas, twin stars shining bright. The articles are plastered with photos of the girl, her father, and an artist rendering of the planet. Out on the streets, people start recognizing Remina as the girl everyone's talking about. They constantly comment on how stunning she is, gazing at her with total admiration. Being naturally shy and completely unaccustomed to the spotlight, it's all too much for her. When a couple of random women rush up asking to shake her hand, she completely panics and runs away. Later, at a fancy high-rise restaurant, Remina is grabbing a bite with a young guy named Mitsumura. She's expressing serious doubts about going into show business. He tries to reassure her, insisting it's nowhere near as scary as she thinks. He pushes her to work with him so he can make her a star, promising he'll handle absolutely everything. Remina just doesn't think she's cut out for it, adding that if she had known she'd get this ridiculously famous, she would have fought way harder to stop her dad from using her name. Mitsumura, however, thinks it's incredibly sweet that her father named the planet after her proof of how much he loves her, and argues it's all the more reason to accept his offer. He wraps up by saying the choice is ultimately hers, but taking the leap will help her discover the other Remina hiding inside. She just gives him a quiet, thoughtful look. A few days pass, and Remina is having a meal with her dad. She tells him they need to talk. She's actually considering accepting the offer to go into show business. Professor Oguro is stunned, knowing how dead set against it she was before. But Remina has realized she can't just hide from the world forever. Her dad fully supports her, telling her that whatever she decides, he respects it. Honestly, he's just relieved to see her taking a more positive approach, as it broke his heart watching her suffer in the spotlight he accidentally forced her into. Even though Romina still wonders if she really has what it takes to handle the industry and everything that comes with it, her father cheers her on and promises to support her however he can. Fast forward a bit, and the whole city is buzzing about young Romina's upcoming debut. News breaks that she signed a contract with Vesta Productions, and everyone's wondering if she's going to be the next big superstar. Her debut draws a massive live crowd of 30,000, screaming, enthusiastic fans, all dying to get a glimpse of her. Young, beautiful, and mysterious, Romina becomes a full-blown social phenomenon. After the performance, everyone talks about what a massive triumph she was. The fans absolutely adore her, though for Remina, the whole experience feels completely surreal. Her new manager reads off her first official gig, a commercial to be the face of the Menecci Corporation, a top-tier construction company. He also mentions that her fan clubs are multiplying like crazy, and she needs to pick one to be the official club. Remina is sitting there looking down, leading him to ask if she's feeling sick or overwhelmed. She assures him she's fine, just that everything is blowing up so fast it's starting to really scare her. He steps in to calm her down, swearing she has nothing to worry about because he's right there by her side to protect her. That seems to put her at ease, at least a little. The scene shifts to the sprawling mansion of Mr. Menecci. He's invited Remina and her manager over for dinner. The CEO gushes that ever since Romina became the face of their ads, profits have absolutely skyrocketed, and he offers her his deepest thanks. He then introduces his son, Kunihiro, mentioning that the boy is one of her biggest fans and he's been counting down the seconds to meet her. Kunihiro asks his dad if he can give Romina a tour, and soon the two of them are wandering the endless halls of the estate. Remina remarks on how massive the place is, and Kunihiro excitedly asks if she wants to see their private nuclear fallout shelter. They head down a flight of dark stairs until they reach a heavy security door, like something out of a submarine. Inside is a huge, heavily reinforced room stocked with furniture and stairs. Kunihiro tells her that literally no one knows this bunker exists except him and his family. When Romina asks if this massive space is just for the three of them, he smoothly replies that it's for four counting her. She's understandably a bit confused by that. He quickly covers by adding that the fourth spot would actually be for his older brother. The problem is, he left home 10 years ago. His brother dreamed of being an astronaut, but their dad strictly forbade it, so one day he just packed up and vanished. They haven't heard a single word from him since. Meanwhile, back at the observatory, a researcher notices something utterly terrifying. He's glued to a monitor tracking planet Remina. Professor Oguro rushes in, apologizing to his colleague, Ikeuchi. He casually asks if anything new has popped up since he left. Ikeuchi slowly turns to face him, absolutely drenched in sweat and looking completely panicked. He tells the professor that yesterday, Remina stopped. Oguro is dumbfounded. Stopped? As in, the planet is just sitting still? No, Ikeuchi replies. After stopping, it pivoted directly toward our solar system and is now hurtling straight for them. Planet Remina is heading for Earth at near light speed. At its current pace, it will be here in a month. The professor is totally bewildered and asks how he can be so certain. Ikeuchi explains the grim reality. What they're seeing on the screen is Remina from 16 light years away, meaning they are watching what the planet did 16 years ago. If it turned toward our solar system back then, and it's moving near the speed of light, the fact that they're seeing it right now means the planet is already at the doorstep of our solar system. Remina is coming, and it's almost here. Oguro desperately tries to calm Ikeuchi down, questioning the logic behind all this. But Ikeuchi's response is chillingly bizarre. I saw it. We made eye contact. Oguro shivers at the words. Ikeuchi rambles on, saying that Remina looked right at them, sensed their existence, and that's exactly why it's coming for them. He bursts into a manic, nervous fit of laughter while the professor frantically tries to snap him out of it. Down in the city, a swarm of anxious people corners Professor Oguro. Everyone is on edge over the leaked data, demanding to know if it's true that Remina is heading for Earth. Rumors are spreading like wildfire among astrophysicists that Romina is on a collision course with our planet. Worse yet, some claim the rogue planet literally devours any celestial body it approaches, meaning Earth is in grave danger. Visibly flustered, Oguro quickly dismisses the claims, insisting they are nothing but baseless rumors. Meanwhile, Romina gets a call from her dad. She's completely out of the loop on these new rumors. He quickly breaks the situation down for her, swearing that all the panic is built on fake news and telling her to ignore everything people are saying. Later, while riding in a flying car, Mitsumura tells Romina that since it's her birthday, he's thrown together a little surprise party for her, but they just have to shoot a quick TV spot first. As soon as they land in the parking garage, a massive crowd ambushes them. They want to hear directly from Romina about the killer planet hurtling toward them. They're begging for a statement. Mitsumura aggressively shoves them back, shouting that it's all garbage and they need to leave her alone. Once they're cleared, he tells Romina to just put it out of her mind, convinced it's a ridiculous rumor that will blow over in no time. Over at another building, Romina's surprise party is in full swing, her first birthday with her new team, complete with cake and confetti. A man holding a bouquet introduces himself as Naoya Goda, the president of her official fan club, and breathlessly tells her she is his absolute idol. She thanks him, feeling a bit awkward. Suddenly, another guy with a different bouquet shoves Naoya aside. It's Kunihiro Minechi, the kid who showed her his fallout shelter. A petty argument breaks out among the guests over who gets to give her their gifts, but the bickering stops dead when someone violently hurls an object right at Romina's face. A raw egg smashes against her head, covering her in yolk. The men who were just arguing instantly pivot, furious, scanning the crowd to find out who threw it. The guests glance around suspiciously, but no one seems to have seen a thing. Mitsumura quickly rushes Remina away to get cleaned up, and she starts sobbing quietly on the way. He tries to comfort her, rationalizing that the egg was probably meant for one of the guys fighting over her and just hit her by total accident. "Do you really think so?" she asks tearfully. He just tells her to get changed and promises to wait right outside. Alone in the room, Romina catches a breaking news report on the TV. The anchor announces that the International Astronomical Union has officially confirmed planet Romina is moving rapidly toward our solar system, sitting just a few thousand miles away. Almost immediately, he corrects himself, getting live updates in his earpiece. The planet is already inside our solar system. Romina's anxiety spikes. The anchor goes on to say there are unverified reports that Neptune and Pluto have completely vanished. It looks as though they were utterly wiped out. Seconds later, fresh intel comes through confirming the worst. Neptune and Pluto have indeed been annihilated. Panic erupts in the streets as people watch the broadcast on giant jumbotrons across the city. The secret is out. Romina is coming, steadily devouring every single planet in its path. Later on, the newscaster delivers another grim update. Saturn is gone too. They broadcast terrifying footage of the event, showing planet Remina passing straight through the gas giant, enveloping it in a blinding light before Saturn simply blinks out of existence. The public is absolutely terrified, agonizing over whether Earth will meet the exact same fate. People scramble to find any possible way to survive. Word on the street is that the only chance is to evacuate the planet, but there simply aren't enough spaceships for everyone. Not to mention, no one knows if the lunar base will survive either. Flying loudspeakers start blaring a message from the government, begging citizens to stay calm and return to their homes immediately. The broadcast promises that the international community is actively working on a solution and urges everyone to keep a cool head. But nobody is calming down. People yell that it's completely insane to go sit in their houses just to wait for death. The crowd scream that the elite and politicians are just going to save themselves in escape ships, and that there's absolutely nothing anyone can do to stop Romina. Couples break down crying, clinging to each other, terrified of dying. Suddenly, one man grabs the crowd's attention, asking if anyone else finds this whole situation incredibly suspicious. The crowd pauses, perplexed. He points out how vast space is. It makes zero sense for a rogue planet to make a beeline straight for Earth. He refuses to believe it's a coincidence and insists there's a reason it came here first. He lays it out. Planet Remina shows up exactly as Professor Oguro predicted. Then, he gets a Nobel Prize out of it. And right after, his daughter Remina becomes a massive celebrity. The nervous crowd asks what he's getting at. The man drops his grim conclusion. Oguro and his daughter summon the planet. A dead, heavy silence falls over the crowd, their eyes hardening with extreme tension. Up at the observatory, Oguro is hit with more devastating news. Jupiter has vanished. Monitors show the gas giant's atmosphere violently dispersing as it collides with Remina, before being rapidly sucked away into nothingness. The researchers are losing their minds. Minutes later, reports come in that the planet has already reached Mars. When the visual feed finally arrives, the footage is purely terrifying. Planet Remina is physically grabbing Mars with some sort of grotesque, bizarre appendage. Professor Oguro can barely comprehend what he's watching. The news broadcasts the horrifying footage of Remina consuming Mars and pivoting to barrel straight toward Earth. The globe descends into sheer panic. News stations roll footage from Tokyo showing rampant riots, people smashing property and flipping cars. A collective, deafening chant rises from the mob. Death, death. They want Oguro and his daughter dead, and they are actively hunting them down to end their lives. The bloodthirsty mob swarms the building where Remina works, while she's trapped inside. Watching the chaos unfold on TV, she peeks out the window just as a massive wave of people breaches the entrance, tearing the place apart to find her. Mitsumura, Kunihiro, Naoya, and another guy burst into her room, desperate to help her escape. The building is totally overrun. The furious armed mob is storming up the floors, so Remina and the guys make a break for the stairs while being chased. It's a frantic sprint up toward a flying car on the roof, and they dive in at the absolute last second, peeling out into the sky just before the rabid mob bursts onto the rooftop. Kunihiro has no idea what's going on since he hasn't seen the news. Mitsumura grimly explains that with Planet Remina looming so close, society has completely collapsed into panic, and the public has decided it's all the girl's fault. Looking down at the streets below, they witness a horrifying sight. An endless sea of people armed with crosses, dead set on capturing Remina and her father. The mob is blinded by fear and rage. But as terrifying as they are, there's something infinitely worse waiting above them. High up in the sky, a massive, shadowy figure is now visible. It's Remina. People panic as they notice its terrifying presence. They are on the verge of a collective nervous breakdown, screaming that they're going to die, that the Earth will be destroyed, and that everyone will be reduced to dust. Government loudspeakers beg the population to remain calm, reporting that Remina has slowed down. The cause of this deceleration is unknown, but the planet has completely stopped right before touching the Earth. They also announced that a lunar base has launched a probe to analyze the celestial body and conduct further studies. Hearing this news, the public rejoices. They think the Earth is finally saved, completely ignorant of the nightmare that is about to unfold. Up on the moon, a vehicle is seen taking off. A transmission broadcasts from inside. We are approaching Remina. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary planet. It doesn't seem to possess anything specific that justifies the sheer terror gripping the Earth. Looking at it, no one would ever guess that this mass had ripped through space at astonishing speeds, or that it had destroyed planet after planet on its warpath to Earth. Seeing the significant drop in speed, the astronauts conclude that the danger has completely passed. The ship enters the planet's orbit, and the pilots prepare to approach its dark side. Kaneishi, one of the crew members, gets ready to log observations. But as the ship moves forward, he notices something bizarre. Absolute terror washes over his face. "What is it, Mr. Kaneishi?" the commander asks. The astronaut can't even describe it. He tells his superior he just has to see it for himself. Outside the ship is a horrifying sight. A gigantic circle with bulging veins on the edges, what looks like massive eyelashes, and a colossal iris staring right back at them. One of the men can't comprehend what he's seeing, but to the other, it's terrifyingly obvious they've run directly into a giant eye. They try to rationalize it, desperately theorizing that it might just be a massive volcano. But then, to dispel all doubts, the giant eye literally swivels to look straight at them. The commander lets out a blood-curdling scream. A appearing to suffer a massive panic attack. Down on Earth's surface, the citizens have no idea what's happening up in space. However, they do notice that the planet continues to look larger and larger in the sky. People don't understand why this is happening if the planet supposedly stopped. Panic surges once again. The population theorizes that the government lied just to pacify them. Paranoia returns with a vengeance, along with the delusion that the planet was deliberately summoned by someone. Professor Oguro, the man who discovered it, and his daughter, Remina. Rioters scream that the two are emissaries of Satan, proposing that they track them down and eradicate them, believing that sacrificing them will make the planet disappear. Or at least, that's their deranged theory. The masses join the hunt, and the vicious pursuit of the father and daughter resumes. Elsewhere in the city, Remina and her companions are still hiding inside a dark building. Mitsumura thanks everyone for helping protect her. Naoya responds that there's no need to thank him, as he's simply doing his duty as the president of her fan club. Kunihiro, acting visibly jealous, snaps at him not to hog all the spotlight, adding that Naoya might be the fan club president, but he is her official sponsor. Naoya, somewhat baffled, replies that he wasn't trying to place himself above anyone. Kunihiro just scoffs dismissively and proceeds to turn on the TV to check the news. The broadcast reports the lunar probe has been completely unresponsive since yesterday afternoon, floating the grim possibility that it crashed onto Remina's surface. The anchor continues, stating that while the planet keeps decelerating for a cosmic event, Mitsumura Someone asks Professor Oguro if he has any ideas to solve this apocalyptic nightmare. He has absolutely none. Another colleague brings up the horrific accusations, blaming him and his daughter for summoning the planet. Oguro dismisses it as total, unscientific nonsense. Right then, another researcher informs Oguro that they are receiving a new transmission. It's from Kane Ishii, one of the astronauts from the Remina mission. They all assumed the ship was destroyed upon entering the atmosphere, but apparently they managed to land. The crew sent back a video showing an indescribable, hostile wasteland. Professor Oguro and his colleague can't believe their eyes. In the video, astronaut Daisuke Kaneishi explains that an accident forced them to crash land on Remina, and only he and Simon survived the impact. The surface is sinister, and the terrain is far too harsh to establish any kind of base. He notes that analyzing the atmosphere is impossible because some of the planet's elements are entirely unknown to human science. Then, the other astronaut, Simons, spots something in the distance. He points his finger, and distinct, bizarre silhouettes can be seen. They look like humanoid figures trying to signal them. The camera zooms in on these supposed beings, and then the video abruptly cuts to black. The professors have no idea what to make of the terrifying footage. Pacing through the facility, Oguro mentions he intends to return to Tokyo. He is deeply worried because he hasn't heard a single word from his daughter. His colleague heavily doubts this is a wise move given the current situation, especially since the observatory is currently surrounded by a rabid mob that actively wants to murder him. Down in the dark sewer system, Remina and her companions trudge through the foul wastewater with great difficulty. Kunihiro loses his patience and angrily asks Mitsumura what the next step of his grand plan is. Mitsumura replies that once they get out of the sewers, the absolute priority is keeping Remina completely out of sight. Suddenly, a bright flashlight beam cuts through the dark behind them, and a voice shouts, "There they are! They've been found!" Mitsumura spots an exit ladder. They scramble up as fast as they can and slam the heavy manhole cover shut behind them. They're on their way through the chaotic streets once again. Once outside, they realize the horrific truth and will find a way to get her out of there, swearing that he loves her more than anyone else in the world, despite knowing how she truly felt about Mitsumura. They finally arrive at the execution site. One of the hooded men points into the distance and sneers. Just, a painfully familiar figure comes into focus. It's her father, Professor Oguro, nailed to one of the crosses. Romina is paralyzed with terror, seeing him covered in brutal, bloody wounds, and she screams out for her dad. Recognizing his daughter's voice through the blinding pain, Oguro screams for help, begging anyone in the crowd to save her father. At that exact moment, one of the hooded leaders gives the fatal order. A group of men lunges forward, violently driving their long spears right through Ogoro's body. Romina completely breaks down, screaming in horror. Covered in fatal wounds, her father dies agonizingly on the cross. High above, the planet end of the world, the mob is celebrating Professor Ogoro's death right in front of his daughter. They stab him over and over with their spears, completely deluded to thinking this is some kind of sacred execution. Romina screams for her father while the crowd howls. The professor stops moving. His head slumps forward, a thin trail of blood dripping down. Romina screams even louder. Following the hooded leader's orders, the mob tackles the girl and violently drags her across the ground. No one steps in to stop them. They bind her wrists with ropes and hoist her up onto the cross, tying the ropes tightly around her limbs to secure her against the lifeless body of her father. The frenzied crowd chants the word, death, over and over again. Covered in sweat and racked with pain, the young girl calls out to her dad with a weak, broken voice, while Planet Remina looms massive over the entire horrifying scene. Suddenly, terror washes over the crowd. They notice something peering out from beneath the planet's thick clouds. It's staring right at them with a colossal eye. Hovering over the execution site, the mysterious celestial body just watches, expectant. Remina screams, but the mob has gone completely dead silent, their mouths hanging wide open. When the massive eye opens fully, the entire planet Earth is reflected perfectly in its pupil. The people start shrieking in sheer horror. It's just too much to comprehend. Then, another feature emerges on the planet's surface. A mouth. A pair of grotesque lips. Right beneath the main eye, two smaller eye sockets slowly appear. The Earth's moon casts a tiny, insignificant shadow against Romina's massive surface. From the planet's horrific mouth, a gigantic tongue slithers out and stretches toward our moon. Romina's tongue wraps entirely around the tiny sphere and swallows it whole, shifts its gaze, and the grotesque tongue shoots out once again, this time aiming straight for Earth. The people watch this ripped away. Their target is obvious. They seem to hit Planet Romina directly, triggering a massive chain of blinding explosions. The missiles all detonate together, creating an unbelievable light show in the sky. But then, something inexplicably terrifying happens. The missiles actually rebound back toward Earth. At first, it looks like a beautiful shower of glowing lights falling from the sky. But as soon as they make impact, the deadly spectacle ends, and the real devastation begins. It transforms, reducing them to rubble. Intense shockwaves and endless deafening blasts rip through the area. One of these, swallowing the executioners in thick smoke and burns them alive, rushes back to save her. The relentless explosions churn up a massive curtain of smoke that finally obscures Planet Remina's terrifying giant eye. Naoya sprints through the burning ruins with Remina slung over his back. Entire buildings are completely carbonized, and many are still engulfed in flames. Naoya pushes forward desperately, dodging falling debris to avoid being crushed and buried. In the background, Naoya is absolutely ecstatic, laughing like a maniac. We rescue her. But her first instinct is to just happened flood back. Tears stream down her face, and she curls up on the ground in agony. Naoya tries to give her strength, assuring her that he's right there with her. But only one word leaves her lips, Mitsumura. She just keeps repeating his name over and over. Naoya is stunned and heartbroken. He bitterly reminds her that Mitsumura is dead, and that he is the one protecting her now. But he can't even finish his sentence. The words are completely useless. Remina just keeps sobbing and repeating Mitsumura's name. Later, hiding her face under a large hat. Romina walks alongside. Now at her fan club, nothing brings him more joy than letting her know he's always been fascinated by her. He calls her a magnificent flower and says he will settle for just admiring her from afar, insisting he won't cross any lines because she belongs to all her fans, not just one person. As they keep walking, they stumble upon someone huddled over with their head covered. The stranger looks up. Naoya immediately kicks him away, furiously chewing him out for abandoning them to die just to save his own skin back in the alley. Kunihiro frantically tries to claim it was all a big misunderstanding, but Naoya isn't buying a word of it. He clocks Kunihiro with a brutal punch, beating him repeatedly and threatening to crack his skull open. Romina quietly says, "Stop," but the beating continues. She screams at this time, "Stop." Naoya freezes and looks back at her. She begs him to please stop. Utterly crushed by her rejection, mutters the word, wanders off silently on a rock. He urges her to come back to his house, warning her she'll voices echo through the ruins. It's the mob. They're actively hunting her down to kill her. Hearing the riders closing in, Kunihiro grabs her by the arm and drags her away. After trekking for a while, they finally reach his massive house. Inside, his parents immediately start screaming at him for disappearing and keeping his phone turned off. He makes up an excuse, saying he had to hide because the mobs are hunting Romina, and he thought they might target him too, adding that he's been protecting her. When his parents realize the girl hiding under the hat is actually Romina, they absolutely lose it. Kunihiro tries to justify bringing her there, boasting that he's her #1 sponsor. His parents fiercely argue that harboring her will bring the mob right to their doorstep. His mother viciously calls the girl a bringer of misfortune and get ready to leave with them. Kunihiro is totally confused. They explain that they are escaping Earth on a top-secret government spaceship. They are actually discovered that it has a breathable atmosphere, meaning it's supposedly habitable. His father then drops a massive bombshell, completely convinced that his runaway son actually achieved his dream of becoming an astronaut, slightly altering his name. Kunihiro asks if he can bring him behind, dramatically declaring he wants to marry her. His mother absolutely forbids it. Ignoring them, Kunihiro grabs the girl and drags her down to the bomb shelter. Down in the bunker, he smugly tells Romina not to worry, totally confident his parents will cave just like they always do. But she just calmly states that she is staying on a grand plan to take her to planet Remna, and then he suddenly forces himself on her, trying to kiss her. He pins her down. Right at that moment, someone calls out Kunihiro's name. His parents have breached the shelter. Caught red-handed, Kunihiro instantly plays the victim, lying to his parents that Romina was the one who threw herself at him. His father snaps that they've wasted enough time and orders him to throw her to the wolves, drags her up. He throws open the front door, only to find an angry mob led by one of the hood. He violently shoves Romina straight into the mob's waiting hands and slams the heavy door shut behind her. Romina is trapped once again by the very same people who crucified her earlier. The hooded cultist sneers at her. When she jeering, the crowd screams that the hunt is on, chanting for her death as they chase her through the ruined city. One of her pursuers, flying on a jetpack, fires a machine gun at her, maybe just to terrorize her even more. But then, the earth violently shakes again, causing the few remaining buildings to dangerously sway. Heavy streetlights snap and crash down, nearly crushing the mob. Buildings, even though it's nighttime, the sky is unnervingly bright. Planet Ramina's massive gravitational pull is tearing the Earth's crust. Decides they have to kill the girl right now, convinced these catastrophes are only the beginning. Romina keeps running, bolting down a set of stairs under a bridge and ducking through narrow, debris-filled alleys. She spots a dark, makeshift shelter built out of wooden planks and crawls inside. But suddenly, it looks like they're walking past, but the hooded cultist violently rips the wooden planks away, exposing them. Romina shrieks in horror and desperately clings to the stranger. Together, the leader orders his men to drag them both out. The homeless man asks if they are all sick in the head. One of the cultists sneers that she is the sick one, raising a sickle to her. He explains, "There's no need to panic. Planet Romina hasn't moved any closer since the missiles struck yesterday." He orders his men to grab both of them. Furious, the homeless man demands to know what this has to do with him. The cultists colds them. Romina begs them to stop. crying out that he has absolutely nothing to do with this. Annoyed by her pleading, the leader orders them to shut her up, torture. They laugh uncontrollably, thoroughly enjoying the dead tree. Enraged, the man curses at them to let them go. The hooded leader completely ignores him, raising his rod and viciously whipping Remina. She screams in agonizing pain. The relentless strikes tear through her clothes and leave the homeless man had kicked him earlier. Gets his revenge by smashing a heavy club into his head and kneeing him in the gut. But the homeless man just spits blood and mocks her, calling the doom heading their way. They're all going to be bums soon enough, so they might as well enjoy the few minutes they have left. This completely triggers the leader, who orders them to beat the man harder. Meanwhile, he continues his savage whipping of Remina. He shows absolutely zero, is completely gone, their expressions twisted into masks of pure insanity. Remina is in absolute agony, her back and arms covered in wounds. The leader sneers, telling her to suffer more. Desperate and broken, she cries out to her father, for Mitsumura, screaming into the void for someone, anyone, to help her. Just then, something unthinkable appears in the sky, immediately. They haul Remina and the homeless man through the ruined streets, bringing them right back to the exact spot where her father was crucified. Now, his body is nothing but a charred, unrecognizable husk. Seeing what's left of him, Remina breaks down sobbing all over again. The leader orders them tied to the cross right alongside her father's corpse. The homeless man keeps screaming that they are all completely sick in the head. The hooded cultist commands them to light the pyre. Flames erupt gasoline onto the fire, making the blaze explode even higher. The crowd is absolutely loving it. Suddenly, a massive tip of it gently touching down on the ruined city. The planetary licking stirs up massive windstorms across the surface. Blinded by the dust, the homeless man asks Remina if she's still alive. He complains that planet Remina just keeps staring at Earth, savoring the view like a dog staring at a juicy steak. It's trying to make the moment last, but eventually, its hunger is going to win out, and it will swallow them whole. Soon after the winds die down, a deafening roar shakes the ground. It's a massive tsunami. Colossal waves crash into the city, swallowing the half-destroyed buildings and violently sweeping away everything, structures, vehicles, and the screaming mob. Miraculously, Remina and the homeless man remain securely tied to the cross. The violent tides churn huge boulders and debris at lethal speeds, leaving Remina barely able to keep her head above the water to breathe. Meanwhile, in another location, a massive government spaceship launches from Earth. Among the large crew are Kunihiro and his family. Mr. Minechi's vast wealth essentially bought their survival. The CEO chats with the Prime Minister, bragging about how lucky they are to be on board, completely confident that landing in planet Remina's atmosphere will be like finding paradise. Back on Earth, the apocalyptic waters and winds violently clash. The cross holding Remina and the man finally gets wedged into the top of a ruined building. As the worst of the disaster passes, the homeless man checks if the girl is still conscious. She doesn't answer. Suddenly, pitch black darkness envelops them. It becomes the dead of night in mere seconds. The sky takes on a bizarre, dizzying effect, with the stars appearing to streak across the sky at breakneck speeds. The homeless man quickly realizes the terrifying truth. It isn't the stars moving, it's them. The Earth itself is now moving at an unimaginable velocity. The colossal planet Remina stares down at the Earth, its gaze locked on the two victims hanging from the cross. Suddenly, the scenery shifts. Flashes of light streak across the sky from one end to the other, as if the stars themselves are racing around them. It takes the homeless man a moment to process the bizarre sight before the terrifying reality sets in. It's not the lights moving, it's the Earth. The planet is violently spinning on its axis. Remina's massive eye watches expectantly, fixed on them while blinking in and out of view as the Earth rotates. The rogue planet is using the very tip of its monstrous tongue to spin the Earth like a toy top. Realizing the sheer scale of the nightmare, the homeless man grimly concludes that, this time, they are all completely screwed. Beside him, the young girl, Ramina, lets out a few weak sounds. "You're alive," the homeless man breathes. The cross they are tied to has somehow gotten wedged in the window of a flooded, ruined building. Suddenly, from the dark waters inside the structure, the hooded cultist emerges. His dark robes are completely soaked, but he slowly drags himself out, utterly relentless in his mission to torment the girl. He lunges at the cross and, to everyone's shock, uses a jagged shard of glass to slice through the thick ropes. The homeless man plummets from the cross, hitting the ground hard. As he scrambles up, he sees the hooded man grabbing the girl behind his back. The mysterious figure lets out a twisted, comical laugh and leaps away with an unbelievably massive jump. The homeless man is stunned. How could a normal person jump that high? He attempts a small hop himself and instantly realizes his body feels incredibly light. He watches in horror as the cultist effortlessly swings Ramina's limp body through the air, violently smashing her against a piece of floating rubble and spinning her around. Infuriated that this maniac is playing with her like a rag doll, the homeless man shouts a warning and prepares to jump after him. He launches himself, but miscalculates the bizarre physics, clumsily overshooting his target. The hooded man simply leaps in the opposite direction, trying to make off with the girl. Adjusting to the new reality, the homeless man corrects his trajectory and resumes the chase. Finally, with a massive leap, he closes the distance and intercepts the cold. Behind them, the masked man screams for the rest of the mob, alerting them that he's found the witch. Slowly but surely, the mob begins to close in. The homeless man desperately tries to escape, and the raging winds whip them forward faster and faster. Suddenly, he realizes he isn't just being chased by one maniac. An entire horde of people is after them. Many of them are armed to the teeth, completely hell-bent on murdering the girl. Their faces are twisted masks of pure insanity as they leap through the air at terrifying speeds, completely euphoric in their bloodlust. High above, the giant eye of planet Remina watches the spectacle. A swarm of tiny figures hunting down an unconscious girl, and the complete stranger who decided to save her. The mob screams, "Death to the witch!" It's a literal flying army. The wind force becomes so intensely violent that it's life-threatening. Unable to change direction in midair, the homeless man rockets straight toward a building, smashing through a glass window and flying right through the interior of the split structure. As he keeps moving forward, some of their pursuers slam brutally into the building's exterior walls. Out the other side, the homeless man notices something terrifying. The massive, gouged tracks left by planet Remina's tongue are clearly visible on the Earth's surface. He jumps again, but is instantly caught by a rogue gust of wind. It's so powerful he can't even fight it, so he just lets the blizzard carry him away. Glancing back, he sees the mob still relentlessly pursuing him. He mutters to himself that they are way too stubborn, wondering just how much longer he can keep this up. Meanwhile, out in space, the massive scar left by Ramina's tongue is clearly visible on Earth. At that exact moment, fine. But then, the injured man opens his eyes, and his skin instantly undergoes a horrifying transformation. It looks as if his face is literally being incinerated. Kunihiro and his mother scream in pure terror as the astronaut's head completely melts into a grotesque puddle of dissolved flesh. The family shrieks that this place is totally uninhabitable. It's pure hell. Remina is the planet of death. Back home, planet Remina continues to watch the Earth spin at breakneck speeds. On the homeless man's back, Ramina finally starts to regain consciousness. Groggy and disoriented, she asks where they are. He tells her they're somewhere near Africa, casually mentioning that they crossed the Sea of Japan in a single leap, and at this rate, they'll hit South America in a few hours. Ramina is completely bewildered, having no idea what she missed while she was passed out. But when she looks over her shoulder, her confusion turns to absolute horror. Hundreds of people are flying through the air, relentlessly pursuing them. It genuinely looks like the entire world is hunting them down. People from all over the globe, screaming in different languages, demand that she stop. It's an endless swarm of blurry figures. The homeless man grimly explains that the entire world believes sacrificing her is the only way to make the planet go away. Heartbroken, Ramina tells him he can just drop her. After seeing all the destruction she's supposedly caused, she refuses to be a burden to him or anyone else anymore, but he refuses. He tells her that given the situation, dropping her now wouldn't change a single thing, so he's decided to see this through to the very end. A little while later, they arrive at the other side of the world, somewhere in South America. The mob just keeps growing. One lunatic lunges at them with a 4-pronged pitchfork, but the homeless man swiftly kicks him away. There are just too many of them. The hooded cultists couldn't have orchestrated all this. These people are driven by pure, feral survival instinct. Someone fires a handgun at them, narrowly missing, but the intense recoil sends the shooter spiraling wildly out of control into the void. Another attacker speeds by in a flying vehicle, overtaking them and attempting to spin around for a head-on collision, but the chaotic winds throw him course, and he plummets to the ground. The homeless man warns Romina to brace herself, explaining that the wind currents are impossible to control, and they could just as easily crash at any given second. High above, the giant eye of Romina watches the chase. Down below, Romina and the homeless man are starting to struggle for breath because the Earth's air is slowly being dispersed into space. They fly over a massive volcanic zone and realize they've already circumnavigated the globe. They're back over Japan, and Mount Fuji is violently erupting. If they keep going that way, they'll be roasted alive. Suddenly, the hooded cultist intercepts them, violently grabbing Remina by the leg. Their momentum stalls, and the massive swarm of pursuers crashes right into them. The entire mob collides in mid-air, a massive dog pile of bodies plummeting straight down into a mountain of ruined buildings. From above, it looks exactly like a swarm of bees, aggressively returning to a hive. Meanwhile, on planet Remina, the human colonists are paralyzed by fear. The melted remains of the crewmen prove that the planet's atmosphere literally dissolves the human body. The Medici family screams that they need to evacuate, but another man reveals the grim truth. The rocket is completely ruined, and they only have 2 days' worth of oxygen. Medici frantically tries to calm everyone down, arguing that his son, Daisuke, is alive somewhere on this rock, which means he must have found a way to survive. But as they stare at the melted corpse, something horrifying begins to emerge from its mouth. It's a massive, fleshy tongue covered in blinking eyes. It grows so rapidly and reaches so high that the crew has to crane their necks just to comprehend its sheer size. Suddenly, the monstrous appendage whips down, snatching up the colonists like a colossal snake. It coils around them, squeezing so violently that the immense pressure crushes them to death. The tongue continues to mutate and expand, taking on the shape of the grotesque, branch-like vegetation that covers the planet. Medici and his family scramble away as fast as they can. Kunihiro complains that he feels incredibly heavy, and his father explains that it's the intense gravity urging him to push through the pain. Medici falls slightly behind to scan the area, and from the deep shadows, a mysterious figure emerges. It's wearing a spacesuit with the name Kaneshi on it. It has to be Kunihiro's missing brother. The figure stumbles forward unnaturally. Medici tries to talk to him, but then he notices something horrible. Bursting through the broken visor of the helmet is another alien entity. It violently launches itself upward, leaving the hollow astronaut suit crumpled on the ground. They realize the terrifying truth. This entire planet is covered in eyes that track their movements, and mouths that spit out those monstrous branching tongues. One of those massive tongues, tipped with grotesque orifices, slithers directly toward the fleeing family. The family is never seen again. Only their helpless, agonizing screams echo across the wasteland, with absolutely no one around to hear them. Planet Remina watches the rapidly spinning Earth and unleashes its colossal tongue once more. Down in the ruins, the massive pile of human bodies is a gruesome sight, with blood splattered absolutely everywhere. Miraculously, Romina and the homeless man who hit the ground first managed to survive. The vast majority of the mob was instantly killed on impact. Covered in blood, the homeless man helps Romina crawl out from under the mountain of corpses. Looking up, they see the planet's monstrous tongue wrapping completely around the Earth. The homeless man yells that they have to run, but Romina just asks, "Run where?" The rogue planet completely eclipses the earth. Suddenly, the rubble around them begins to float into the air, and everything seems to freeze. Romina pulls herself up and frantically looks for the homeless man. She gasps in horror when she sees his arm crushed under a massive slab of concrete, assuming he didn't survive. But then his other arm reaches out, grabs the massive structure, and effortlessly tosses it aside. He explains that it's the gravity planet Romina's immense pull is making everything on Earth weightless. Romina mutters that she prefers this over the violent centrifugal force from earlier. They leap away in light bounds and soon stumble across a few other survivors. The homeless man tells them to follow him, and the small group navigates the destroyed city. When Romina asks where they're going, he says he knows a place he hopes is still standing. They arrive at the ruins of the Menecci estate, which Romina instantly recognizes. They all leap over the perimeter wall, but midway through the jump, they feel themselves being pulled straight up into the sky. The homeless man barely manages to grab hold of a sturdy tree branch. It's finally happening. Planet Remina is literally swallowing the earth. The group is violently tossed around, but they desperately cling to each other. Using the chaotic momentum, the homeless man swings toward the bunker entrance. The group scrambles to the door. One of them tries to pry it open, but fails. The homeless man quickly places his hand on a biometric sensor, and the door opens. As everyone rushes inside, Remina suddenly screams. The homeless man runs to help and sees the hooded cultist from before dragging her away by her ankles. Furious, he yells at the man, asking if he isn't tired of chasing her yet. The cultist pulls out his rod and starts savagely whipping the girl, but during the struggle, the cord tangles around his own face. To rip it off, he accidentally tears his mask away, finally revealing his identity. The unmasked man screams at Romina that she has no right to love anyone because she belongs to humanity. He furiously spits that he could never forgive her for falling in love with the other guy, meaning Mitsumura. Then, repeating over and over that he loves her, he finally lets go of her leg and lets the void sweep him away. The homeless man pulls Romina to who that was. She just quietly replies that he was the president of her fan club. Once everyone is safely inside, they head down to the basement. The homeless man guides them through the house just as the entire city and everything outside is completely obliterated. Planet Romina fully engulfs the earth, dragging it into its cavernous mouth, surrounded by an endless ring of razor-sharp teeth. The earth is shattered into hundreds of millions of pieces, stripping it down to its core before finally being digested by Remina. The mysterious cosmic entity casually devours another celestial body as if it were a totally normal, everyday occurrence. Afterward, Romina's gigantic eyes slowly close, and the planet drifts away, continuing its dark journey through space. Sometime later, Romina opens her eyes. She's floating. She, the homeless man, and the rest of the group actually survive. They are inside the Menecci family's nuclear bunker. Romina floats over to the exterior hatch and looks out into deep space. Apparently, the entire bunker, shielded by heavy protective layers, was blasted into orbit during the Earth's destruction, likely floating alongside countless other fragments of their dead world. Through the window, they watch planet Remina fading away into the distance. The bunker didn't suffer a single scratch, and neither did they, thanks to the reinforced walls. Still, surviving feels like an absolute miracle. The homeless man notes that they can survive in there for a while, though probably not for more than a year. Romina takes a guess and asks if he is Daisuke, Mr. Menecci's eldest son. Surprised that she figured it out, he confirms it. He explains that he left home 10 years ago with dreams of becoming an astronaut, but it never worked out. One of the other survivors recognizes the girl and asks if she is Romina Oguro. When she says yes, he introduces himself as Kentaro Iwai, a huge fan of hers, and introduces the other girl with him as Yumeno, who is also a fan. The couple explains that they found the two younger kids buried in the rubble earlier, who are now happily playing in the zero gravity. The couple sincerely thanks Daisuke for saving their lives. With a smile, Daisuke points out that their ordeal is really just beginning. They're stranded blindly and with limited food. but then he laughs, adding with genuine optimism, "But hey, who's to say we won't get to see another miracle?" The group ends, laughing and spinning around in the zero gravity. But Romina just floats quietly by the window, lost in thought. Her mind is heavy with two people, her father and Mitsumura, and so they continue sailing into the stars with no idea where they will end up. The only certainty is that Earth is gone forever, leaving behind nothing but floating debris and the memories of a world that used to be. And that's where the story ends. If you made it this far, yeah, you already know this story was messed up. So go ahead, drop a like if it got under your skin, and subscribe if you want more dark stories like this. Trust me, it only gets worse from here. I am Grimlore, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Grimlore here. Today we are looking at a classic story called Tomi, written by Junji Ito. This is actually one of his earliest works, and honestly, the terrifying way it messes with your head makes it deeply disturbing and completely unforgettable. If you enjoy diving into dark and weird manga, be sure to leave a like and subscribe before we start. Let's get right into it. Our story begins at the funeral of a young girl named Tomi. She was apparently the victim of a brutal murder. Parts of her body were found scattered across various locations, and rumor has it that some pieces are still missing. The killer is still at large, and their identity remains completely unknown. At the funeral, Tomi's teacher is consumed by guilt, as the tragedy occurred just after a school field trip while the students were heading home. The students are all questioned in hopes of finding clues about whoever is responsible for her death, but the police turn up nothing. The following day, the teacher thanks the entire class for attending the girl's funeral. One of the students feels particularly awful for Yamamoto, as he was Tomi's boyfriend and seemed deeply in love with her. The teacher goes on to warn everyone to be careful, reminding them that the killer is still out there and could be hiding anywhere. Then, right as the teacher says she is never coming back, someone walks into the classroom. Tomi appears in the doorway, casually saying, "I'm sorry, I'm late." The entire class is paralyzed with shock, staring at her in absolute terror. After class, a couple of students are gossiping about what just happened, the dead girl who returned to school. They dub her the zombie girl. Watching her walk by in the distance, they remark on how beautiful she is. One of them jokes that, dead or not, he wouldn't mind spending some time with her, to which the other replies, "You know, necrophilia is a crime, right? But the girl is right there, fully alive." As you might expect, the teacher calls Tomi into the staff room. He interrogates her about who she really is, asking if she might be Tomi's sister, but she insists she doesn't have any sisters. The teacher is at a complete loss. Suddenly, the girl throws her arms around him, declaring her love and saying she wants to marry him as soon as she graduates. The man panics, yelling at her to let go. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, the students are furiously debating Tomi's reappearance. They wonder what she could actually be, a ghost, perhaps? One argues that if Tomi really survived, she'd be a crucial witness to catching the killer. Another calls him an idiot, arguing she has nothing to do with the case, and that it must just be a case of mistaken identity. Right in the middle of their argument, someone bursts into the room with bad news. Mr. Takagi, their teacher, seems to be having a severe nervous breakdown. The students are terrified as they end up having to take him away from the school. The other teachers and staff discuss the bizarre situation. They double-check her dental records, which confirm that the mutilated body they found was definitively Tomi. They also verify with the authorities that the girl's remains have already been cremated or buried. Yamamoto tries to continue his relationship with Tomi, but her very presence now instills a deep sense of dread in everyone, causing them to actively avoid the boy as well. Days later, Tomi is chatting with her friend, Reiko. Tomi complains that Yamamoto has been acting incredibly cold toward her lately, and she casually drops the bombshell that she had slept with Takagi at some point in the past. Reiko, however, barely hears a word she says. She just stares straight ahead, completely on edge, unable to comprehend why everyone in class is acting like they're just ignoring the situation. Reiko tries to rationalize everything in her head, desperately telling herself that maybe Tomi never died after all, that maybe this whole horrific ordeal was just a nightmare. Her rationalizing shatters when she is suddenly paralyzed by the sight of Tomi leaning over a bridge, staring intently at the river below. Reiko immediately recognizes that specific bridge. Filled with an overwhelming terror, she sprints away, not daring to look back. She discards all her logical theories, coming to the horrifying conclusion that Tomi must be some sort of vengeful spirit who has returned to torment them all. She runs non-stop until she reaches the school, where she bumps into Yamamoto. Reiko breaks down, telling him she can't take it anymore. Yamamoto feels the exact same way. They are both petrified, completely clueless as to what that girl actually is, but convinced she's trying to drive them all insane. And this is exactly where the truth is finally revealed to us. Why everyone is so terrified, why they're avoiding Tomi, why the teacher had a nervous breakdown, and how Tomi actually died. After 5th period, on the day Tomi died, the class took a field trip to a small mountain known as Maruyama. Halfway up the trail sits a shrine with absolutely no one around, surrounded by cliffs of varying heights and rough, uneven terrain, a perfect spot for a geology lesson. Once the study session wraps up, the teacher lets the students take a break. They decide to play around with a ball, while the teacher heads up to a higher, more secluded spot to relax and smoke. Tomi approaches the teacher, completely uninterested in playing with the rest of the class. Yamamoto watches her from afar, burning with jealousy. One of Reiko's friends remarks on the drama, pointing out that Tomi is always clinging to some guy. Up on the ledge, Tomi asks Mr. Takagi when they can finally be together, demanding that he leave his wife. Hearing this, the man grows increasingly frantic. Tomi threatens him, stating she will never keep quiet about their relationship and everything they've done together. Then, she mentions that she might be pregnant. Right at that moment, Yamamoto marches up, grabs Tomi by the arm, and drags her away. They begin arguing while their classmates watch from below, assuming it's just a normal couple spat. Enraged, Yamamoto slaps her across the face. The other students watch in stunned silence. He asks her what kind of monster she is. As Tomi turns to storm off, she doesn't watch her step. Her foot slips, and she plummets over the edge at full speed. The other students desperately try to catch her. While Yamamoto and the teacher rush to the cliff's edge, Tomi slams violently into the ground below. No one was able to save her. Everyone crowds around her broken body. They see she is completely motionless and begin to panic, frantically asking if she's dead. Yamamoto screams that it's all his fault, that because of him she fell. One of his classmates tries to calm him down while the teacher stares at the corpse, visibly sweating. Yamamoto turns to run for help, screaming for someone to call an ambulance, but the teacher stops him. He grabs the boy's arm and tells him to wait a second. Mr. Takagi points out that Yamamoto essentially caused Tomi's death, asking him pointedly if he really plans on turning himself in. The young man stares back and heads in silence. The rest of the class is quiet and confused. One of the girls speaks up, arguing that it wasn't strictly Yamamoto's fault, that he didn't push her, and that it was ultimately just Tomi's own carelessness. She cruelly calls Tomi a bitch and asks the rest of the group what they think. Another girl chimes in, agreeing that it isn't fair for Yamamoto to ruin his entire life over a person like Tomi. Soon, everyone is reassuring Yamamoto that they have his back, promising to protect him. The class's true, overwhelming resentment toward Tomi becomes blatantly obvious. The teacher reminds them that they had shop class earlier that same day, asking if anyone brought their toolboxes. When the boxes are produced, the teacher instructs the boys to strip down so they don't get blood on their clothes, while the girls stand guard to make sure no one approaches. They all grab saws, hammers, and shears, and together they begin chopping Tomi into little pieces. But as they drag a saw across her leg, they hear something. The young girl spits up a mouthful of blood. She is still alive. She had just regained consciousness. Horrified, the boys ask the teacher what to do. He orders them to hurry up. They cover her mouth, and the teacher plunges a pair of shears directly into her. They relentlessly butcher her body, slicing her apart over and over again, completely hollowing out her organs, her large intestine, her colon, her appendix. When the gruesome task is finally done, the teacher praises the students for their hard work, and they head to the river to wash off the blood. There are 42 students, and exactly 42 pieces of Tomy. Each student is assigned the dark task of taking a piece and hiding it where no one will ever find it. The teacher casually apologizes to the class, noting that this wasn't quite the field trip they had planned to have. After that, they all head home. Along the way, some of the students casually chat about where they should dump their respective chunks of Tomy. Tomy's heart was given to Reiko, likely because she was her only true friend. The girl sobs uncontrollably as she desperately tries to figure out where to dispose of the organ. Ultimately, she reaches a bridge, the very one on her route to school, and tosses the heart over the edge. It plummets into the water below and is carried away by the current. Snapping back to the present, Reiko and Yamamoto are on the run, being actively hunted down by their classmates. They overhear some of the guys talking about the situation. Reiko and Yamamoto have decided they want to go to the police and confess that they butchered Tomy. But Yamamoto is overheard, and the chase continues. Reiko and the boys sprint through narrow alleyways, desperately trying to escape, but eventually they are surrounded by the other students. One of them coldly states that going to the cops wasn't part of the plan. He pulls out a switchblade and threatens the boy, demanding that everyone just go home. Yamamoto screams for help to anyone who might be nearby. The armed student lunges at him. Yamamoto dodges the attack and falls flat on his back right next to Reiko. They scramble to their feet and keep running. Reiko is convinced they're never going to make it to the police. They are exhausted, stumbling, and soon enough, the rest of the class catches up to them. All seems completely lost. But at that exact moment, someone steps out of the shadows. The very person everyone is utterly terrified of. "What do you think you're doing?" asks Tomy, perfectly made up and flawlessly dressed. The moment they see her, the mob of pursuers scatters in absolute terror. Reiko looks up at her and begs for forgiveness. But Tomy completely misinterprets the scene. She asks Reiko what's going on, accusing her and Yamamoto of looking a little too cozy, implying they might be having a secret romantic affair. Reiko frantically tries to explain that it isn't what she thinks. She scrambles to her feet as fast as she can and runs away in a blind panic, leaving Yamamoto alone with Tomy. Later on, Yamamoto would be found in that very same alleyway, completely alone and deeply traumatized, trapped in a state of incoherent shock, just like Mr. Takagi. 3 days after that night, Reiko's parents moved out of the city to a town near the beach. Slowly but surely, the girl's life returned to normal. The only updates she ever got about her former classmates were that several had dropped out of school, and at least 2 had taken their own lives. Class 1B seemed to completely disintegrate after Tomy's return. Why did she return? Reiko tries to rationalize it. After agonizing over it for a long time, and now with a calmer mind, she concludes that Tomy must simply have survived.
forgot you know how to draw real good.
Nah, I don't know how to draw it, man. I just trace.
Oh, you just tracing?
Yeah, I'm saying. Yeah. That's what I'm doing down here.
Oh. You did all this by yourself? On yourself?
Nah, I designed them.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, boy.
entire horrific school trip had been just a nightmare, some sort of mass hallucination. That's the only logical explanation she can find, because the alternative would be impossible. After all, how could an entire class of students commit such an atrocious act? How could any of it be real? Reiko firmly convinces herself that Tomi was never a ghost. Unfortunately for the girl, while walking along the beach, she stumbles upon an old parcel tied with a ribbon that looks far too familiar. There is something dark nearby. She continues down the shoreline toward a rocky outcrop, only to discover that Tomi has somehow managed to find her once again. The end. Now, let's break down a few things about this story, just in case some details weren't entirely clear. First off, it goes without saying that Tomi absolutely did die. Everything that happened on that school trip actually occurred, and Reiko's final thoughts on the beach are just her brain's way of blocking out her memories and grasping for a more logical explanation. But the reality is that Tomi somehow returned from the dead. The ending, where Reiko finds her on the beach, is a massive clue regarding Tomi's terrifying regenerative abilities. So, in case you were wondering, yes, all 42 severed pieces of Tomi have the potential to grow into brand new Tomis. The catch is that some pieces simply don't find enough organic matter to feed on and absorb in order to construct a complete organism. The one on the beach is one of these underdeveloped fragments. Perhaps it will slowly regenerate completely if it manages to scavenge fish brought in by the tide or something similar. The Tomi who casually strolled back into the school is one of those fragments that, for reasons left unexplained, managed to regenerate completely in record time. Other pieces were likely incinerated and will never grow back, but there will always be the lingering threat that if any intact remnant of Tomi's body exists, she can return, just as we saw in the story. Another key point to mention is that the original Tomi, for lack of a better term, was having an affair with her teacher while simultaneously dating Yamamoto. Whether the girl was actually pregnant or not is never confirmed. It very well could have been a manipulative lie to force the teacher into marrying her. The important thing is that they all carved up Tomi for their own distinct reasons. The teacher orchestrated the whole thing, convincing all the students to protect Yamamoto from the police because murder was never actually his intention. The rest of the class readily agreed, as the story makes it clear that absolutely no one really liked Tomi as a person, except for her friend Reiko, who was handed her heart. It was easier for the students to participate in distributing Tomi's body parts thanks to the teacher, simply because he was a figure of authority. But the teacher's true intentions were to dispose of Tomi so she couldn't ruin his life and his marriage, since they were seeing each other in secret. When Tomi regenerates, we aren't told exactly what is going through her mind, but she behaves more or less exactly as she did before she died. However, she doesn't seem to remember what they did to her, yet she does stare intently at the bridge where Reiko threw her heart. This implies that something in her subconscious has triggered a blurry memory that she can't quite piece together. Or perhaps Tomi remembers absolutely everything and is simply faking it. The severe panic attacks that the teacher and Yamamoto suffer in the story aren't fully explained either, leaving it up to our own speculation. Did Tomi do something to these men? Or did the sheer psychological weight of the moment simply break them? I personally think it was the latter. They were incredibly on edge due to the circumstances. I don't believe Tomi possesses some supernatural power to directly alter people's minds and force them into absolute panic like that. In the lore, Tomi does have another bizarre effect on people that triggers intense, violent impulses, but I won't dive into that here, as it isn't something explored deeply in this first story. I hope you enjoy this narration of the first chapter of Tomi. I'll be uploading the next story to my channel soon, so you can enjoy that one too. I'm Grimlore, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, Grimlore here. Before we dive in, you should know that this story is a direct continuation of the first one, though it takes place quite a bit later, which means we'll be meeting a lot of new characters. I also want to give a quick warning. This chapter is definitely bloodier than the last. I hope you enjoy it. The story opens with a mysterious figure vaulting over a wall and disappearing into the streets. Sometime later, two doctors at a mental institution are having a tense discussion about the incident. The man, a deeply disturbed patient, had managed to escape that very morning. It turns out, this man is none other than Mr. Takagi. Years ago, a chilling rumor began circulating about a seemingly supernatural event at the school where Professor Takagi used to teach. A young girl named Tomie was brutally murdered, and the media had a field day with the gruesome details. She had been chopped into countless pieces, many of which were never recovered. The killer was never officially found, but given the circumstances that ultimately drove Professor Takagi to the psychiatric ward, specifically the sheer madness that consumed him after seeing Tomie seemingly alive and well after her funeral, the doctors speculate that he might have been the murderer all along. People whispered that Tomie had casually shown up for class the day after she was buried. There was no shortage of rumors about her ghost wandering around in broad daylight. In fact, there were quite a few witnesses beyond just Takagi. However, Takagi himself fiercely denied that she was a ghost. He insisted that the girl had simply never been human to begin with. This bizarre delusion completely fascinates the doctors, who are eager to delve deeper into the darkest corners of Takagi's mind. But first, they have to track him down and bring him back. Meanwhile, over at Morita Hospital, a young woman named Yukiko is admitted as a patient. She gets a visit from her friend, Tadashi. Yuki mentions that someone gifted her some apples, but she can't actually eat them because she's on a strictly monitored diet. Keep in mind that in places like Japan, fruits like apples can be pretty expensive. Because of this, Yuki lets Tadashi eat one instead. She vents to him, saying how desperately she wants to leave and how completely sick she is of being stuck in that place. Tadashi tries his best to cheer her up, though his tone is rather serious, reassuring her that she'll recover soon. Deep down, however, Yuki knows the grim reality. She isn't leaving that hospital unless she finds a kidney donor. Tadashi genuinely tells her that he would give her his own kidney if he could, but unfortunately, their blood types just aren't a match. Yuki and Tadashi are close friends, though the story heavily implies that Yuki's feelings for him run a bit deeper than mere friendship. Eventually, Tadashi says his goodbyes, mentioning that he has some errands to run, and thanks his friend for the apple. As Yuki hears the door click shut, she can't help but wonder why Tadashi has felt so distant. She senses a lingering insincerity in his words. Peeking out her hospital room window to watch him leave, her heart sinks. She spots a mysterious, striking, and incredibly slender woman waiting for him outside. Seeing them together leaves Yuki feeling crushed. 2 days pass before the mysterious woman from the courtyard pays Yuki a visit right in her hospital room. Yuki recognizes her instantly. The woman introduces herself as Reiko Mizutani and wastes no time getting straight to the point. She coldly demands that Yuki stop seeing Tadashi. Naturally, Yuki doesn't take this well. Reiko presses on, claiming that Yuki needs to back off for Tadashi's own good. Yuki fires back, calling the demand entirely selfish and completely absurd. Absurd? Reiko scoffs, asking Yuki if she's even bothered to look in a mirror lately, while still harboring pathetic delusions of becoming Tadashi's girlfriend. Reiko twists the knife, asking if Yuki seriously believes she stands a chance competing against her. In a quiet, defeated voice, Yuki just asks her to leave. Reiko agrees to go, but not before delivering one last, crushing blow. She tells Yuki that she is nothing but a burden, causing Tadashi unnecessary stress and anguish. According to Reiko, Tadashi confessed that he can't wait to be rid of Yuki, that she's far too clean, and that it would honestly be a massive relief if she just went ahead and died. Yuki screams that she's lying, but Reiko's venomous words plant a deep seed of doubt. Reiko sneers that Yuki is too blind to ever see Tadashi's dark side, the way he masks his cruelty, or the horrific things he says behind her back. Yet, despite it all, Reiko smirks and says he's exactly her type, and that they are deeply in love. Pushed over the edge, Yuki hurls a stuffed rabbit at her. Reiko easily sidesteps it, looking at her with mocking disbelief. "Did you seriously just throw something at me?" Just then, a nurse rushes in. Yuki desperately begs her to kick Reiko out. The nurse scolds the visitor, firmly reminding her that the patient requires absolute peace and quiet, and strictly escorts her out. Before stepping through the door, Reiko shoots Yuki a look and tells her the choice is now in her hands. Left alone, sweating and trembling, Yuki collapses back into bed, desperately trying to convince herself that it was all just a pack of lies. Another day rolls around, and Tadashi comes to visit again. He looks incredibly worried when he sees her, noting how miserable she appears. He's visibly distressed that her condition has worsened, completely oblivious to what's actually tearing her apart inside. Yuki can't even bring herself to look at him. She coldly informs him that Reiko Mizutani came by for a chat. If you love her so much, Yuki tells him, then that's fine. You don't have to keep coming here. With that, she dismisses him. The young man is left standing there, stunned into a heavy, dead, serious silence. That night, Yuki's condition takes a nosedive. The doctor is urgently paged to room 201 regarding his kidney patient. He quickly confirms the worst. Condition is spiraling into uremia. This is a severe complication where the kidneys completely fail to filter urea, causing toxic waste to build up dangerously in the blood. The doctor immediately orders the nurses to prep Yuki for emergency dialysis. He asks the nurse if Yuki had strictly stuck to her diet, to which the nurse insists she did. The doctor hypothesizes that she must have somehow managed to sneak some highly salted food, but the nurse firmly argues that it doesn't seem likely. Amidst the panic, Yuki's weak, frail voice cuts through the room. Doctor, it's fine. Just leave me be. I'm ready to die. The medical staff can only stare at her with profound sadness. The doctor immediately starts the procedure, staying by the young girl's side and desperately begging her not to give up. Meanwhile, Tadashi and Reiko are out on a date, but the atmosphere is thick with tension. Tadashi is completely silent, his face stony and dripping with sweat as they walk. Reiko notices his grim mood and asks, "What's wrong?" Tadashi finally breaks his silence, telling her he knows she went to see Yuki. Reiko confirms it, cheerfully describing Yuki as a sweet girl and claiming they had a lovely little chat about her life, dreams, and goals. Reiko acts thoroughly charmed by her and even gossips about a handsome doctor at the hospital who seems to get along swimmingly with Yuki, suggesting there might be a spark there. Tadashi sharply cuts her off. He demands to know why she's talking like this, asking if this whole thing is just some sick game to her. He confronts her with the fact that her name and her supposed school seem to magically change every single time he asks about them. He realizes he knows absolutely nothing about who Reiko actually is, but he does know Yuki, and he knows for a fact that Yuki is nothing like the person Reiko is describing. He knows she's lying through her teeth. Completely ignoring his outburst, Reiko casually distracts herself by admiring a pair of earrings in the window display. She remarks on how beautiful they are and casually demands that Tadashi buy them for her. Exasperated, Tadashi reminds her yet again that he's already milked his parents for too much cash. He can't invent any more excuses to bleed them dry. After all, he's just a broke student, like she supposedly is, with no real income. Reiko just shrugs it off, nonchalantly saying she'll just go find some rich guy to buy them for her instead. As she turns to walk away, Tadashi is thrown by a bizarre comment she makes. "Who is she?" he asks, confused. Tadashi is left standing there, struck by the chilling realization that Reiko probably isn't even her real name, and that he might have blindly fallen in love with a complete degenerate. His mind drifts back to the day they first crossed paths. They met on a beach, and from the very beginning, Tadashi felt an unnatural, gnawing impulse taking root inside him, a dark urge that only grew more overwhelming the more time he spent with her. But the most unsettling detail of all was a news story he'd seen 2 days prior. It was a newspaper article about a brutally murdered young woman. The photograph of the victim was identical to Reiko. It wasn't just a passing resemblance. They shared the exact same face, right down to the specific placement of the mole. Tadashi theorizes that this morbid, terrifying connection might be exactly what sparked his absolute obsession with her in the first place. Resolving to sever ties once and for all, Tadashi decides to stop seeing Reiko and heads straight toward the hospital to make amends with Yuki, deeply regretting how cold he had been when she needed him most. Suddenly, Reiko slips out from the shadows of an alleyway. Tadashi freezes in his tracks. She finds his obvious terror incredibly amusing, teasing him that she was only joking and that she simply loves playing games with him. She purrs that she doesn't actually care about the earrings. All she really wants is him. She tells him she loves